I want to welcome our math team now. I see Lisa and Michelle and Alix. And so they will have a chance to introduce themselves and share a little bit about who they are, as well as what they're doing in their classes and what it's like to take math at Catlin Gable Middle School. We have one math member, Dan Reinhardt, who may not be able to join us tonight, but I do want to introduce him in the event that he is not here. So I'll turn it over to the math team.
I guess, Alix, are you sharing the presentation?
I wasn't sure if you wanted to, since you'll have to share your screen afterwards.
Okay. Let me pull it up. Actually, if you have it up, I've got my other screen set to be able to share the live pieces.
Okay, give me 2 seconds.
In the meantime, while she's doing that, I'll share my shirt today. I often wear some kind of a shirt that's either math or social justice related. If you know the manual alphabet, this signs out equal, E-Q-U-A-L. And I like it because it has both a math connotation and a social justice connotation, and it has all the rainbow colors.
Oh, there I am. Hi, I'm Michelle Huang. I was born in Vietnam and I grew up in California. And I taught for my first 10 years in New York City. And then I moved to Portland in 2015 and started teaching at Catlin in 2016. So I've been in math education since 2006. And what really got me started teaching math was actually a workshop by Bob Moses, who is an activist and a math instructor, a math educator. And he started the Algebra Project that really excite my passion for teaching math. And I've always been trying to be so I'm an anti-bias and anti-racist educator in progress. So I've always been trying to approach my classes with that lens, and more so this year, with everything that's going on. And when I'm not teaching, this should say I'm usually cooking, but I don't know what happened there. So yeah, I've been teaching at Catlin since 2016. Yep, so that's me.
Thanks, Michelle.
Yeah.
Lisa.
Okay, there's another one of my t-shirts. I'm Lisa Lavelle. I have been, well, this is sort of my first year teaching at Catlin, but sort of not. I taught a sixth grade math lab and then stepped in to help out with some seventh grade classes a couple of years ago. And I've been involved in tutoring. I've previously taught in public and private schools, one actually very similar private school in DC called Murray. I also teach at Lewis and Clark. I am the math secondary content coordinator in their teacher education program. And so some of my graduate students come and observe and also help out in some of the classes. You can see that I've gotten into being an athlete later in life. I played roller derby in my 40s, and now I'm doing aerial arts in my 50s. And I've been in mathematics education since 1990.
Thank you, Lisa. Hi, everyone. My name is Alix Woodall. I was born and raised in Washington, D.C. My mother is French. I'm French American. French was my first language. But soon after moved to Montreal and studied there, and then moved to New York, which is where I began my teaching career. And I did my grad school there as well. And then moved to Portland a year ago. So it's still a pretty new city for me. Prior to Catlin, I taught math and served as a dean of curriculum and instruction at a middle school in Brooklyn. And so shortly after that, I moved to Portland. And so this is my second year now at Catlin. And I have a couple hobbies up here as well. But I really enjoyed my time at Catlin so far, and I'm excited to continue this year. And so this is our aim statement, and it aligns very much with our mission statement as well and our instructional philosophy here at Catlin. And so our math program develops students who are joyful and creative problem solvers that approach challenging mathematics with curiosity and perseverance. Through independent effort, communication, and collaboration, we hope that our students investigate and analyze problems flexibly, construct their understanding of mathematical concepts, and develop the skills and strategies to apply in their own financial literacy and in exploring and addressing issues of inequity. And so we really ground a lot of our teaching in this. And Lisa and Michelle, I didn't know if you have anything you wanted to add to this one before I move to the next slide.
Yeah, I'll just toss in that this is school-wide. This is not just the middle school. This is mathematics at Catlin overall.
And so some goals that we have and that we sort of ground a lot of our middle school math work in are really, supporting students in skill building and problem solving and algebraic thinking, and really focusing on that foundation and building that strong foundation starting in 6th grade. We focus on the second one a lot too, but building confidence, making mistakes and learning from those mistakes, and really embracing a growth mindset in doing so. We do a lot of communication of different mathematical ideas in collaboration with peers. And again, this aligns directly to the instructional philosophy we just shared. And then finally, we do really focus on building those strong student skills and habits so that students become agents in their own learning and are able to sort of foster that autonomy. Or we try to foster that autonomy as much as possible to support students in their independence of their learning.
And I really see this in terms of how we build our classroom culture too. We try to build it so that their students are comfortable making mistakes, they're comfortable sharing that, they are willing to share why or help each other figure out why they've made mistakes and do some of that problem solving together.
Mm-hmm. Lisa, did you want to talk about this one for a little bit since it's...
Sure, since I brought this one in there. So we are, this is the Common Core Mathematical Practice Standards, and sort of this is in student-friendly language. This is something I've used with my graduate students in both elementary and secondary school, and I find it very useful to have it in student-friendly language. If you have read any of the Common Core standards, especially if we look at the mathematical practice standards, there are these big long paragraphs that explain what those are. And they really boil down into these 8. And this is just about how do we approach mathematics separate from the content standards that we look at in the grade levels. This is what we want students to be able to do sort of as an overarching mathematical mindset.
Do you want me to talk about this, Elise?
Sure, thank you, Michelle.
So, in middle school, these are the math courses that are most of our students are taking. And so in 6th grade, most of our students take Math 6, but for those who came to our middle school with having already taken Math 6, then they would take pre-algebra. And so we meet students where they are when they come into the middle school. We don't encourage students tests out of any of the classes. And so whatever they took prior to coming to the middle school, that's where we start them. And then so from Math 6, students will take pre-algebra, and then from pre-algebra, they will then either take a full year of algebra or a half year of algebra, which is algebra 1A. And then if the students come into 6th grade taking pre-algebra, then they'll go into algebra 1 and then geometry in 8th grade. So that's all the courses that are taught in the middle school.
All right, so we wanted to share a couple sample activities with you. One is sort of an exploratory activity, and the other has to do with it's a middle school problem that has to do with a little bit of social justice. So I'm gonna share my screen now to be able to actually demonstrate this. So let's see. All right, so this is something called Desmos. It's the teacher side of Desmos. I'm going to share a student view of it. Part of the reason we like this particular program is because it is a fairly strong graphing calculator, and you can look at some spreadsheets and other pieces on this, but it's an open educational resource. So it's not something that kids have to purchase. This is available to anyone out there to use for these purposes. And the student and the teacher tools are also free, but there's some very rich things you can do here. So I'm just going to give you an example of an exploration that I did with my Algebra 1A class earlier this week. So we're doing marble slides. And what happens is we've got some little ways to sort of direct where those marbles are going to go. And through this exploration, it asks them to look at the structure of a particular type of equation. For those of us who have taken algebra or remember our algebra, we have a linear equation here in slope-intercept form. And notice the instructions say to change one number in the row below to fix the marble slide. So students get to sort of explore and play with the numbers. So if I'm going to fix one number, and let's say I decide to change the slope first, not knowing, of course, that this is the slope, I see that that didn't really help me very much. So I'm going to change that back to a 2, and I'm going to think about playing with, well, what happens if I change this number? And I make it, instead of a +1, I make it a -2. And then I can launch the marbles to try and capture all the stars. So there's a little bit of an exploration piece here. And then later on, if we move on to a couple of the next slides, that's just an instruction for resetting. It's going to ask you after you've done a little bit of exploration. So here's one where a slope is going to change. And here's when we start doing something called restricting the domain. So getting the line to stop in a particular place. It will eventually ask for you to make a prediction. So after you've done a little bit of exploration, predict what will happen based on the structure of this equation. And then on the next slide, it'll ask you to actually test that. So it's a really nice exploratory piece. And then later on toward the end, after we go through several exercises, there are some challenge problems where now that you've learned something about the structure of equations and how to limit the domain, you get to type in linear equations to try to capture all of these stars. So there's a bit of a challenge here because you can see these ones are not all in a straight line like the initial ones that we looked at. The other activity I just wanted to share you with, and this is more of a, hold on one moment, let me pull it up so you can read it while I'm looking. This one is more to talk about social justice, and it's something that sparks a lot of interest. It's a little bit more of an open-ended question, even though we're starting with a few calculations. So basically what this is doing is it's comparing the wages of someone making minimum wage at McDonald's to the reported CEO's annual salary. And that can be done in a couple of ways. So it provides a couple of interesting conversations that we can have in terms of, do you write it in terms of the CEO's salary or the hourly worker's salary? And then we get into issues of, is this fair? What are some other things that come along with having a salary versus being an hourly worker who's making minimum wage? So this is a really nice way to sort of explore what are some of the differences that are out there in terms of socioeconomic status, and how does that play into what you're able to afford. So those are just a couple of the types of activities that we look at in our math program. So Alex, do we have a one or two more slides, or are we on to questions at this point? Oh, you're muted.
I'm muted. That has happened to me so many times today. The last slide is just our Q&A slide. So I think we can
Okay.
probably open it up for questions.
Yeah.
And would you all like me to moderate the questions, or would you like to do them yourself?
Let's see, I can pull up.
I think then you can track that for us. What's going on.
Let's see. Looking at what things, okay.
Sorry, did you want me to moderate the questions?
Sure, yes.
Okay. All right. So the Desmos demo was pretty cool. I had not heard of it before. Do you help coach for math competitions?
Oh, I haven't in my current position. I've been a math coach for math teams in the past, but I haven't yet, since this is my first year at Catlin. I haven't gotten into that yet.
And maybe a broader question is, are there opportunities for middle school math students to engage in any kind of math competitions?
Yes, we let's see. Alex, do you want to speak about what you do?
Well, I was going to say, I can speak to the Olympiad piece. So we have a program called Math Olympiads, and I run it with Anna Blakesley, who's the lower school learning or math specialist, excuse me. And it's open to students from 3rd to 6th grade for this year. And so we do practice and prepare for those competitions, which are happening this year virtually, but we're still trying to maintain that practice. And then Michelle, I wasn't sure if you were going to speak to the
math
second.
week. Yeah, so that was the other opportunity that student can opt into, and that's run by a parent who volunteered to coach our students after school, and then they also enter into a few different competitions and tests.
Thank you. All right. How do you support students who might be struggling with content or skills?
One of the things that's been added to the program, actually I piloted it 2 years ago, is something called Math Lab. And so for students who have identified as being struggling in some way, shape, or form, that's something that is added to their schedule, and it's a specified time where we meet with them a couple of times a week in the current formation to help them either review some exercises with which they struggled, or sometimes we preview material. We also have office hours a couple of times a week. That's what we've done while we are teaching remotely. When we've been in the classroom, there are lots of times when kids come in, sometimes they would hang out in our classrooms during lunch and ask questions, or after school. And then we also have the opportunity, sometimes office hours get a little busy. And so we'll make some individual appointments that go beyond that time to focus for particular students when they ask for a little bit of extra help, or we will ask them to come to those if we notice that they could use a little extra help.
And we also have a learning specialist who also meet with students who are struggling, and a lot of the time, a lot of the skills that prevent students from succeeding in math class is more organizational, and there's other skills that they need to improve in or need support in that our learning specialist, Veronica, also helps them in that area. And then she finds time to meet with them outside of class. And also she sometimes do preview lessons with those students as well.
Alex, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
I was just going to name that we're really intentional also about differentiation that can happen in the classroom as well, whether it's grouping students in a particular way or setting students up to support one another with that. We're again in a strange remote setting, but even with that, we're very intentional about making sure that students who may be struggling with content or skills still feel supported with the material in class as well. And so we sort of dovetail that with the supports that Lisa and Michelle also mentioned.
Could you describe a little bit more, or maybe even an example of how you had said, Alix, that you sort of set students up to support each other?
I think in terms of the grouping, being intentional about partner work or group work and having students who, they can work on their areas of growth together and their areas of strength also lends itself to sort of building that confidence in the areas where they feel really successful, and then sort of having them build that problem solving piece together. In sixth grade, I say 3 before me a lot to try and encourage them to lean on one another with those contents and skills, because typically it's not just one student, right? So we try to really build that team mentality within the class culture.
And the other piece that helps with is a lot of times there's difficulty expressing the mathematics, and the more mathematical discourse they can have with each other, that helps them sort of organize their ideas and learn how to explain where they are better and ask other questions of each other. So it's a skill that we can all of the kids can use, and it helps them all grow.
Great, thank you. All right, how does the new lower school math curriculum, illustrative math, feed into middle school math? Do entering sixth graders take a math placement test? Which is maybe a little bit of a separate question.
Well, with regard to the curriculum, the middle school and upper school are currently in a new curriculum search. So we as a team are looking at different curricula that we can potentially incorporate in both the middle and upper school. So yes, we're very intentional about making sure that the curriculum in the lower school lends itself to sort of a seamless transition from lower to middle and then to upper school. I'm not sure if that totally answers the question, but we do make sure that the transition is as seamless as possible. And again, there's potential that the curriculum may change next year based on the search that we do this year, but that's a very big priority for us.
Thank you.
So I think in terms of whether students are taking placement exam, so if they come from the lower school, then they don't, because our, like Alix says, our curriculum merge, and so there isn't a necessity for a placement test. But if a student is coming from outside of Catlin when they're entering sixth grade, then we look at their teacher's recommendation, what math classes they took in the past, to determine whether they need a placement test or not. A placement test is only given if we think a student is not going to be entering into Math 6 and that they might be able to enter into pre-algebra or any other math classes based on, again, teacher's recommendation and what math course they took prior to entering our school.
Thank you. There are not any more questions in the moment, so I'll ask a question. Oh, never mind. We were under the impression that differentiation does not happen until 8th grade. This was relayed to us this year. Has that changed? And I'm wondering if it's maybe a reference to, I can't remember if it was you, Alix, just talking about how you sort of differentiate within a class.
Yes, I
the
think that
difference
was
between
more,
differentiation versus tracking, splitting the tracks, I think.
Yeah, so I think I was speaking more to, yeah, I was just speaking a little bit more to the differentiation that happens within the curriculum in the classroom. I saw, Ted, you turned your video on at the moment. I was wondering if you had you wanted to speak to this one in terms of the tracking piece.
Well, I was just going to actually say what Lisa said. You know, the kind of definition of differentiation that we're using in these scenarios is more about how are we looking at the students in our classroom, how are we making sure that we are differentiating our teaching approaches to reach every student in that classroom versus tracking, so to speak, where in that way. So yeah, I was just going to point out the vocabulary piece. In terms of kind of, the question in terms of differentiation not happening until 8th grade. The 8th grade is that moment where for students who, as I believe as Michelle earlier mentioned, as they leave 7th grade, if they've been in pre-algebra, they look at Algebra 1A or Algebra 1. And both are algebra classes, just kind of a difference in the number of units that get covered in the full school year. And so, part of the reason why, one of the things we in the middle school really believe strongly in is that acceleration in the middle school years in math can have some detrimental effects, down the road potentially for math students. What I love about our math program is that it really focuses not just on rote memorization of formulas and being able to quickly recall mathematical facts, but it really gets students really thinking about a lot of those pieces that they talk about in terms of the math goals, but a deeper understanding of it. And so, oftentimes what we find in acceleration is that it might be more that surface level rote memorization piece, which does not set students up well further down the line. They need a really strong algebra base that's really the foundation for a lot of higher level mathematics. So all that to say, differentiation or the tracking piece, so to speak, and just in terms of choice of courses, we have 1A and 1 in the 8th grade. And some students choose to take 1A over 1, if they're at that point where they have the option of which one to choose. Some choose 1, some choose 1A, and they do that based on kind of their passions, thinking about their lives and what's going on. And so we support them in all of it.
Yeah, I also want to add that we do encourage students to think about if they do want to accelerate, that the upper school is a place that they can do that, and there's a lot of opportunities for them to do that, so that they don't feel like they're behind because they're taking Math 6 to start in 6th grade, which is where I would say the bulk of our students are in, and there are very few students who take the pre-algebra class when they start 6th grade.
And just in terms of that algebra question again, too, the research has shown that's pretty much a very foundational course for the rest of the mathematics. Previous to that, it's been a lot of focus on how do you calculate, how do you work with numbers, some relational thinking, hopefully that helps with that generalization. But that ability to do that abstraction and generalization comes at different times for different kids, depending upon their development. And it's really important that they get that at the right speed and at the right pace for their thinking progress. We found that those, and research also holds out that if they take it too soon or try to accelerate too soon, they have much more trouble later on. And I often say, calculus is easy if you're a good algebraist.
Yeah.
So really laying the foundation in algebra is really, really important, whether that takes 1 year or 2 years for them to do.
We've got 1 minute. So if one of you can, in less than a minute, sort of just give some quick reasons for searching for a new math curriculum, like, in terms of sort of what are you looking for?
So the reason is that we give our curriculum a solid 5 years of solid application across middle and upper school, and then we come back to the table and evaluate the sort of the benefits of that curriculum, take a look at adjustments that we would like to see potentially in a new curriculum. It's not for sure to say that we're going to adopt a new one, but we like to come back to the table after having 5 years of sort of trial and error with how it's been working for kids. And we really want to make sure that our curriculum meets the needs of our kiddos. So sort of coming back to the table and exploring a lot of the new curricula also that has come about recently as well. well. So we're, it's mostly just having fresh eyes on curriculum and trying to make sure that we're staying, that we're making the right choices for our kids moving forward.
Great, thank you. It's 9 p.m. Thank you, math department, and thank you those who have been attending tonight's session. I hope you're leaving with a greater sense of our middle school curriculum and of course of our incredible middle school teachers. Just want to give you a quick reminder that next Wednesday, we will have a middle school student panel. So it's a way for you to sort of hear directly from students and be able to ask whatever questions you want of them about their life as a middle school student. And then the following Wednesday, we will have a session that's called Beyond the Classroom. And that's a session that will highlight the various ways that students make connections and feel connected to the school that go beyond the classroom. So after school sports and clubs and activities and our CNC advisory program and things like that. And just like all of the sessions, there will be time for Q&A as well on that one. So with that, thank you again for attending, and I hope you all have a lovely evening.